Hi again, everybody, and welcome to The Experience Maker. This is Dan Gingiss, customer experience speaker and coach. I'm so happy to be here with you today and to have you join us for another great episode where I get to talk to an impressive customer experience person out there in the wild doing this for a living so that we can learn from them and hopefully have a lot of key takeaways. Without further ado, I want to bring on somebody that I have heard so much about. We have tons of friends in common, but we literally just met a second ago right before we went live. He is the Chief Marketing Officer and Chief Customer Officer of Volkswagen Group Australia, and he is the author of It's All About Sex, except it's CEX, Customer Experience, the Essential Guide to Customer and Employee Experience. Jason Bradshaw, welcome to the show, man.
Hey, Dan, it's so great to be with you and live with everyone across LinkedIn and Twitter. It's fantastic.
Well, really happy to have you here. As I mentioned in the intro, I've heard so many great things about you. It's amazing it's taken us this long to connect, given how many people we know in common.
Yeah, I was zooming in on your bookshelf there, and I think I know almost everyone that's on your bookshelf. So how our paths have not crossed sooner than this, I do not know. But we're here today, so that's a great thing. And I was checking out your website just before we went live, and one of the things that I love about it that we have in common is that we've both been in the trenches. We've both been working and doing the hard yards to improve the lives of customers and employees. And I think that's fantastic, and probably why your books and your work is so successful as well.
Well, thanks for bringing that up. I mean, I do think it's a differentiator, and there's nothing against the wonderful folks who are our mutual friends that have spent a lot of their careers in the consulting or speaking world. But there is something to being in the chair and having to, get legal approval for your idea or having to move through the red tape of various silos in an organization. And once you've actually experienced it, it really it becomes easier to talk about because you can talk about it from the heart. And so I do love. It's why I tell so many stories about Discover and Humana and McDonald's, because they shaped a lot of my thinking, and I'm assuming that's the case for you as well.
Yeah, so what a lot of people don't know about me is that I started my first business when I was 14 years of age, and selling a range of computer hardware and software equipment, telecommunications, and one of the products I had was a mobile phone or a cell phone that weighed a few pounds and came in a bag. So, times have changed, but that experience at 14, when I was interviewed coast to coast, I said that my difference was going to be customer service, and then. I went down that entrepreneurial route for quite some time. I had 3 businesses by the time I was 21, but an opportunity presented itself, and I joined corporate Australia. And since then, I've been the corporate guy for 20 years, working with some of the world's most recognizable brands, Volkswagen, Target, and others. And it is a different world. But what I think is so beneficial in the work that I do is that as an entrepreneur, you have to move quickly. You can't sit back and go, well, there's still a fairly large chunk of cash sitting in the bank, so I'll just ride this pandemic out. You have to learn how to move quickly, and I think that's one of the reasons, how I differentiate in the corporate world is that I've had that experience of being able to pivot and move quickly to get things done. And like you mentioned, you have to learn how to navigate the various approvals. And I sit on the board of the company here, but there's still mountains of bureaucracy that you have to do, and I think that's really important, being able to fuse those two experiences together and still find a way to make things happen.
So, what about the flip side of that? Do you ever find yourself frustrated that things don't move more quickly with a big company versus, say, a startup?
So. Every company that I've ever left has been because of bureaucracy. It's been because it's taken too long to get things done, and it wears you down. It absolutely wears you down. And one of the things that I try to do really early when I'm in an organization, in a role, is move the culture towards one of action and asking why something happened to understand, as opposed to blame or to shift responsibility on something. And certainly a lot of the work that I've done in organizations has been around that culture piece, because I believe fundamentally that if you want to win, if you want to create, raving fans, it comes down to consistency. So you can have a disgruntled employee deliver a great experience today, but tomorrow when they're having a crappy day, they won't put in the extra effort to serve the customer because they're disgruntled. So it really, does come down to the culture of an organization and how you engage with your team members and how you make their life easier. What are the guiding forces that, when they've got to make a choice between being grumpy bear or happy bear, they choose happy even when they want to be grumpy. It's one of the reasons I would argue that companies like Apple have such raving fans. Now, they brought out a new phone recently. I dropped a pile of cash. It arrives today. Do I need a new phone? Of course not. Like, I don't even know if I'm going to notice the difference between my old phone and the new one. But, they have created this culture where people trust the experience. They trust what they're saying. And do they get it right always? Absolutely not. But they get it right so often and automatically that people buy into that. And that's why you have raving fans. And that comes down to your employees at the end of the day.
Yeah, and I mean, you don't have to go any further than into an Apple store to see that the folks that are in that store love the products as much as the customers do, because they are customers. And I think that makes a huge difference. Now, there may be people watching saying, okay, that's great. We don't have really cool products like Apple does because we're a manufacturing business, or we work in concrete or materials or something like that. And I think that comes down to then the people that you hire, as you mentioned, because what I've found is it's very difficult to teach empathy and a desire to help. That is sort of something that we're either born with or not. It's hard to teach that. You can teach anybody the mechanics of customer service, how to use the phone system, how to use the social media channels, whatever. That's easy. But to find the people that actually want to engage with customers, want to help, that's a little bit tougher. And I think a lot of times companies, that's where they miss. And that's something that Apple and Amazon and others have figured out. Starbucks, I think, is another one where, the people make all the difference. As I like to say, customer experience, one of the reasons why it's a differentiator is because it's delivered by people. And by definition, your people are different than your competitors' people. And so you can be unique in that way.
Yeah, I think it comes down to intentionality. You can have a HVAC servicing business and be famous. And I would argue there's nothing sexy about cleaning HVAC systems or servicing them. But you can have raving fans, but it comes down to the intentionality of why your business exists, what is it that you're going to deliver, and who are you going to select to be part of that journey. You don't need everybody in the world to, love on customers or want to give everyone a hug, but they can still be vital to your business. They're just probably not best in the customer facing areas of your business, right? So it's about intentionality, choosing with absolute clarity who it is that is the best fit for your business, but also who is it that your business is going to serve. Because if you try to be everything to everyone, that's a costly game. You've got to have scale. Sometimes your product's got to do the heavy lifting, but if you get really clear about who it is that you're going to serve and who it is that's going to work for you, then those two things can marry together and make magic.
Yeah, I totally agree. And the HVAC is a great example because let's face it, pretty much every HVAC service provides the same thing, right? The degree of quality difference is probably impossible to tell for the average customer. And they're also roughly the same price, or all of them, put out a coupon every once in a while to get down to the same price. So, I like to say you can't compete. Competing on price is a loser's game. You're not going to stay in business that way. And when you're in a industry like HVAC or something else, where pretty much you're selling the same thing the next guy is, you got to ask yourself what's left, and what's left is the experience. And that's the way that lots of HVAC companies get people to say, I'd never go anywhere else because I know when they come, I can trust them. I can leave them in my house alone. They're always going to clean up. They do a great job. And I would recommend them to somebody else.
Yeah. And that recommendation is what you want. Having a customer recommend you is, We all say it, but it is the cheapest form of marketing. But not only is it cheap, it's also the best form of marketing. I was reading a study just the other day. 70% of Snapchat users, which is probably not you and me, but 70% of Snapchat users buy on the recommendation of their friend. And they will pay not to have ads. That is phenomenal. Not only are they making 70% of their buying choices based on recommendation, but they're willing to pay not to see your ad.
Yeah. Well, or flip it on its side. When's the last time that you clicked on an ad that was forced upon you in some social media channel? I can tell you to this day, I've bought one thing off of a Facebook ad in my life. And because it is so hard, even if you can find the right audience, to also have them being in a buying mode, which most of us aren't when we're scrolling through, whatever it is, our Snapchat or TikTok or Instagram or whatever. It's really hard to find that person who also happens to be in the buying mood. The recommendation from a friend, that is, another thing we probably should have mentioned at the top when we were talking about our corporate backgrounds, is I actually came from marketing. And I spent 20 years in marketing, working pretty much every channel there was other than television. And I am absolutely convinced right now that I would rather have a customer recommending me than spend any money on any marketing channel whatsoever. It's much more powerful. And as you said, it's much more effective. And if we can get that army of people to do it, that's really how we become, we get the kind of success that Apple's had, not to the dollar degree, but in terms of where it stands in the industry.
So, Dan, I gave a speech at a chief marketing officers conference, probably going back 7 years now. And I was the closing keynote speaker. And in the last few minutes of my speech, I said that I believe the chief customer officer should have the seat at the table and the chief marketing officer should report to the chief customer officer. Well, it was a number of years before I got invited back to that conference because I had the opposing view to every chief marketing officer in the room. I am delighted to say that they have had me back, but it took 5 years to get me back. But, I still to this day, believe that to be true. The chief marketing officer has a tough gig. They've got to try and convince enough people to keep buying products, even if they don't want to buy them. Where the chief customer officer has a tough gig, but their job is to have people raving about the product so you don't need the advertising. And in terms of investment, I'd prefer to create some raving fans. That's much more influential than when can I get that next ad spot? And I think if anything, we've seen through the pandemic, certainly here in Australia, just how quickly consumer behavior changed. So we went a different route to the US here in Australia. We went in March. We went into a fairly significant lockdown. We're not calling it a hard lockdown because there wasn't a curfew, but certainly a significant lockdown. Cafes, bars, pubs, venues, events, everything got shut down. You could basically only leave your house to get food or to go for a jog. And when we shut down, all of a sudden, everyone was scrambling to get on TV or onto some sort of social platform because people were either had their eyeballs on TV or on socials. Now, the sheer reality is Netflix and other streaming services, that's where people are watching these days. And you can see that in all the free commercial channels, right? Their audiences are depleting and their ad revenues are going down. But not surprisingly, all of the out-of-home advertisers or providers, suddenly they had an asset that was really expensive that became worthless. I didn't need that expensive billboard outside the airport anymore. But I did need to find a way to connect with customers. And the way that I and the team at Volkswagen in Australia did it was not through spending a load of money on, new media or new digital media, but on creating reasons for people to connect with the brand, to interact with the brand. We did a virtual Easter egg hunt for kids. We supported or we sponsor a sports team, and with that sports team, we did a 15-minute workout with an athlete on Facebook every single day it was designed around kids to help kids, parents with kids that are cramped at home to be active. So we went very much away from let's try to sell to let's just try to be relevant in that person's life and add some value. And I think that's so powerful, is to find ways to add value to people as opposed to just sell all the time. The sale will always come when they trust that you care about them.
For sure. And I mean, you haven't mentioned the obvious fact, which is people are doing less driving because they're staying home. And so it may not be the right time to sell, but you still have to stay top of mind. Getting back to something that you said, it's a great segue about the Chief Marketing Officer conferences. I noticed that you hold both titles at Volkswagen of Chief Marketing Officer and Chief Customer Officer. Tell me about how that works and how that decision was made. And then, what's it like to wear both hats?
So I was and still am, the Chief Customer Officer of Volkswagen Group Australia, and we had a marketing officer. And then over time, my role evolved. And, when I first started, I had traditional customer things. So I had customer operations team and support and customer research. Then I had the network training and development team come within my division. Why? Because training is so essential to the employee experience, but also the customer experience. And then over time, the board took the decision to roll marketing into my portfolio as well. And it was about getting absolute alignment. So, marketers understandably go out there and make promises. They promise what the product's going to be. They promise what the experience is going to be. And unfortunately, my experience has been in many organizations, the chief customer guy is to find a way to try to make that promise come to life, even if it's completely against everything else, right? The company might have a vision this way, but we need a quick injection of cash or sales. So the marketing goes off and creates demand and might not always be aligned. So for us, it was about getting that absolute alignment between what our long-term customer vision was and our short-term tactical needs that marketing drives. And it's been a journey. Both they're separate departments within my division, and both teams have had to come together on things. So and I think it's created some healthy friction. There's been times where the marketing team has turned around and said, "Come on, is this really what Is this really clear? Is this really what we want to do?" And vice versa. And I wouldn't say that it's a perfect marriage, but it's a marriage that's growing closer together and making us really embed some of those things, like what we promise from a customer point of view, into our marketing decision making. So one of the things that I keep talking to my teams about is this something that's going to make you proud, but is it also going to make the customer proud that they chose the brand? And if it didn't make the customer proud, and if you're not proud of it, then why are we doing it? People buying cars are putting down a serious amount of cash. You don't want them to be ashamed of their choice or regret their choice. So having that lens on, from a customer point of view, from a marketing point of view, is this something to be proud of, and is it something that customers would be proud to be associated with, is a really powerful way to reframe the conversation around, is this a CX issue or a marketing issue?
Yeah, I'm so glad you mentioned that, because it's obviously human nature to have buyer's remorse, especially when you spend a lot of money on something. It's one of the first things that we think about. And that doesn't just go for consumerism. It goes for B2B purchases as well. We buy a software package, a SaaS platform, and the first thing we worry about is, man, is my job going to be on the line if this doesn't work? And because we're spending all this money. So it is so important to make sure that the customer feels almost instantly that they made the right choice to join the Volkswagen family, or whatever family it is that you want, that you're having them join. And I'm interested also that you said, because I absolutely believe this, that marketing is really about making promises. And I think over time, what's happened is marketing's role has been less about promising the features and benefits of the product and more about promising the experience that is to come. And you have to make sure then that your company is ready to deliver on that experience. So I wanted to ask you, not to put you on the spot, but I wanted to ask you, what is the experience that Volkswagen Australia is promising?
So effectively, there's three things that we promise to deliver. First of all, we want to make it simple for our customers. Buying a car shouldn't be complicated, yet for some reason it is. So we want to make it simple. We want to make it happen. And one of the things that I talk about in my book and with my teams is the first thing that we have to do is help that customer be successful. And success looks different for every customer. A mum with 3 kids, a mum and dad with 3 or 4 kids, success for them is not going to be the small compact car. Equally, for the HVAC guy or girl, it's going to be the van that can fit all their tools and what have you in. And so we have to make success happen for them. And then the third promise that we have as a brand here in Australia is that we make it personal. And for me, that is about just realizing that at the end of the day, we are people serving people, and we shouldn't let the bureaucracy or process or a sales target get in the way of that fact. And I always say that our first job is to create a relationship with people interested in doing business with us. And they will buy or they won't buy. But if you don't treat them as people, if you just treat them as that next prospect, then we've already lost the game. And so at Volkswagen, keeping in mind those 3 promises, we make it simple, we make it personal, and we make it happen. And one of my mantras is you've got to be intentional with clarity. So we created this little number here, which we call the Volkswagen Way Pocket Card, or our experience standards. I might just zoom it forward for you there. And it's a really simple fold-out document. It talks about our difference, what's going to make us different. What are the 3 things that we need to do with every single customer in every single interaction? And then those 3 promises. And, what is the purpose of the promise, and what emotional connection are we trying to do with the customer? Now, I don't want to claim that this is, my brainchild. It really was inspired by the ladies and gentlemen at the Ritz-Carlton, who, of course, are famous for their Credo card. And I'll just show that one there. And the Credo card is just, exactly the same type of concept. It's about making it really simple for everybody that works in the organization to understand what do we fundamentally want to achieve every day. And I think that as leaders, take off the titles. It doesn't matter, chief customer, chief marketing, chief revenue, it doesn't matter what your title is. As leaders, our very first job is to provide our team members with clarity around what great looks like. And, if people can just work every day towards being that, if every single person in our company looks at their Volkswagen Pocket Card every day and goes, okay, I'm going to find a new way to make it simpler for the customer, or, I'll pick up the phone and have that uncomfortable conversation with head office because I've got to make it happen for the customer. Whatever it is, every single day moving a step closer is what the game's about. Forrester every year releases a white paper called the ROI on Customer Experience, and the Forrester CX Index. And they talk about how much money organizations would make if they improve by just 1%. And it's, not surprisingly, billions of dollars across, multiple industries. My first question is, who wants to sit there and just be 1% better? No one said you can only improve by 1%, right? And that's where I think that entrepreneurs, small business owners and startups absolutely have it over corporates, because they're traditionally more nimble. They're able to listen and evolve very quickly. And that's one of the reasons we made one of the promises, make it happen, because it encourages us to get out of the way of our own stuff and make things happen for customers.
First of all, I love those 3 things. I talk about doing simple better a lot, which is a mantra that I stole from former Chicago Cubs manager Joe Madden, who used it in a baseball sense about running out the plays and handling the normal plays well, but which I think is also a great CX mantra. Obviously, being personable, everybody wants. But this idea of making it happen is just such a, like, I get all the feels when I hear you say that, because it's really about doing what you can for that customer. And sometimes customers are demanding, and sometimes they're too demanding. But when we make it happen for them, what happens is they make it happen for us, because I know lots of people who will never drive another car other than a Volkswagen because they love the brand and they love the car and they've been happy with the experience. And again, if we go back to, this is a big investment. So for somebody to say that, it's one thing to say that about a stapler or even a computer, but to go buy a car and feel that way when you've made such a big investment means, obviously something is going right. So kudos there. One quick thing before we go, and I wish I could have you on for another 90 minutes because I got about 1,000 other questions. But true fact, I have been to more than 35 countries, and Australia has been on my bucket list since I was about 13. I have not made it. And I was in one job where I was in an international role for 3 years. And when I left that role, the very next trip I would have taken would have been to Sydney, and I didn't get to do it. So someday we've got to meet in person, and I want it to be on your turf because I still haven't made it to Australia.
Well, absolutely. I'd love to host you when you get down to Australia. If it wasn't the pandemic, I normally in the States 3 months out of every year or so. But and my childhood dream was to do that, to go to the States. So let's get it ticked off your bucket list and get you to Sydney sometime.
Outstanding. I would absolutely love it. Jason, it has been a real pleasure to talk with you. So glad to finally meet you after hearing so many great things. And I know we'll stay in touch. How can people connect with you out there on the internet or the social medias if they want to follow you and stay connected?
So on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Jason S. Bradshaw. The website, jasonsbradshaw.com/sign up. If your listeners and viewers go to that and sign up, they'll get the first 2 chapters of my book with my compliments, and of course be in the list to receive my newsletter every month. And I'll just emphasize jasonsbradshaw.com. If your audience misses the S, they'll end up at a lovely Californian real estate company. And if they've got 10 million or so to drop, they'll be able to buy a new home. But if they want the CX guy, it's jasonsbradshaw.com.
Awesome. I'm going to put that right on the screen here. There, jasonsbradshaw.com. And what was the after the slash, if we want to?
Yeah, just after the slash is sign up.
Sign up. Okay.
And that will take them straight to the page to get the first 2 chapters of the book with my compliments.
Outstanding. Jason, thank you so much for being on the Experience Maker Show. We really appreciate it. You are the epitome of the Experience Maker at Volkswagen. Keep doing what you're doing, and appreciate your time today.
Thanks very much, Dan. Take care.
All right. And thank you, everybody, for joining me again this week. Super exciting conversation and really appreciate Jason's time. Next week, we are going to welcome Robin Barone. She's the founder and CEO of Diplomat Books. So we're going to switch to the book industry. And she also is a fellow graduate of the University of Pennsylvania. So excited to welcome somebody from my alma mater as well. I'm Dan Gingiss, customer experience speaker and coach. Thank you so much for joining me on Thursdays, every Thursday at 4 p.m. Eastern, live on LinkedIn, Twitter, and Facebook. It's the Experience Maker Show. Have a great rest of the weekend and stay safe out there.